There's a question that sits quietly in the background of every fitness conversation. We don't talk about it much. Yet, it's really important. How is your mind? Not your body, not your marathon PR time, not your bench press time, not your before and after photos. How is your mind? The one thing that makes you show up today, the one thing that tells you to keep going when everything else asks you to stop, or the one thing that probably tells you you're not enough. We spend enormous time training the body and not that much training the mind. But the most important part is today's conversation is not about therapy. It's about performance. Imagine this. Two people walk into a gym floor. Same body, same fitness level, same program. One is mentally present and the other is carrying the weight of a difficult week. What would be the outcome after the session? Most of the time, it's not physical. It is the narrative they have been telling themselves. This is the conversation we are having at RF Insights today. I have two incredible professionals with me today. They are from Peak Performance, which is a sports physiotherapy and sports rehab clinic in Bangalore. They are doing incredible work at the intersection of the mind and body. Let's meet Mrs. Dipali Pandey, who is the founder of Peak Performance. She has been a sports physiotherapist for over 12 years now. She is going to be our body first expert. On the panel joining us today is Mr. Lazarus. He has an MSc in Counselling Psychology and works as a psychotherapist and counsellor at Peak Performance. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Dipali, for joining me on this episode.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Before we get into the big question, I have something to ask you both. What made you say yes to this conversation today?
I think I have known Rungenie for a really long time, so there was no question to say no, and it's a very interesting topic which should be spoken about, and that's why without a second thought I said let's do it.
Thank you.
I think one of the areas that are very misconceived is about mental health in sports, and I've understood that Ms. Rungenie was also covering that aspect over here, so that would be an area that I'd definitely love to discuss, so that was a complete yes for me too as well.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Aaron. And I have something else for you all today. Before this episode, I asked the community, men, women, parents, athletes, what they think about mental health and fitness, and you will hear their voices in this episode, so stay tuned. Let's get into the episode, Mind in Motion. Aaron, the first question is for you. As a coach, I keep hearing people tell me, I could have pushed, but, my mind gave up. So is it true, or how does it work? Does the mind actually give up before the body? Can you tell us how it works?
Absolutely. So the whole concept that you were talking about is something that actually happens in our day-to-day lives, and not just in the field of sports. Maybe to shed better light on it, I could speak about something called the cost-to-benefit ratio. And this is something that our body also does on its own without us actually thinking at times. And it's so active in our body, and it was a study actually done by a person by the name of Samuel M. And he basically said that the perceived effort, when it does not benefit and a total positive outcome, a person generally draws back to, giving up. I'd explain it better with an example. So, for example, now you have two athletes, let's say runners, and both have the same physique, both have the same time stamp and the speed as well, and they're competing, but out of which only one wins, which is actually the possible only outcome. Why would that be? And to answer that, that would be that a person who is, constantly taking care of their mental health and pushing themselves to saying that, you know what, I can definitely do much more than this. Even if they've set a limit, an expectation, their idea is to surpass that and practice for the surpassed point. Not for the point that they actually want to meet. But for the other person, his aim is to just meet that. So that's where, when, let's say they're both running, and now the person who has set an expectation, he wants to just meet the expectation versus the person who wants to supersede it, he would basically look at this person and go ahead of him. And immediately his mind sets back to saying that I don't think I can. So the I can't scenario plays a big role into the brain sending a message to the body saying it's not worth it.
He's basically not mentally prepared.
He's not mentally prepared
to go that extra.
Yeah, extra mile.
Yeah. Okay.
So that preparation, that intensity to actually win is also what does move a person.
Absolutely, absolutely. Dipali, you've been working with people for over 12 years now. And I'm sure you've seen so many cases, right? So how much of what lands on your table is actually a mental problem disguised as a physical one?
I think the real statistics is that in athletes, it's actually more than 40%. That's statistics, right? And maybe I've not seen any studies in general people, but if we talk about athletes, 40% of them are because of mental health issues or some restrictions that they have mentally, right? Everything is not mental health issue. There could also be restrictions. So now what really happens is that when you're constantly in some kind of stress, right? Like the stress can be anything. It can be coming from your family. It can be coming from the pressure of training. It can be coming from that, why am I not better than other people? And there can be so many other things, right? Depending on what age you are, right? The younger ones would have different things. The preteens and teens would have different issues, right? Now, this stress kind of builds in your body. Right? A lot of us think it's just mental, but no, all these mental stress is going to elevate cortisol in your system. Now, the problem with cortisol is that when it increases, it is actually going to affect the tissue quality, right? And it is also going to affect the recovery that your body that the body needs, right? Because if you're training, if you're an athlete, micro traumas are normal. That's going to happen. Higher level of cortisol for a longer period of time is going to slow down your recovery. So your body doesn't recover, right? And then what happens is it also kind of creates a physiological ceiling where your body is saying that I cannot adapt this load anymore. But it's not physical. Again, it's like mental, right? And then a lot of people say overtraining, OTS, overtraining syndrome happens because of overtraining. But it's not just the physical body, it's your mind, right? And that's how people should really understand that it's not always about physical injuries, right? And it's, again, there can be a physical problem. And there can be this happening together. There can be just the stress not allowing you to heal faster. So it has to be assessed properly in athletes so that they understand that what is really going on and which eventually helps them in performance. There are so many patients that I specifically tell them that no amount of manual release and foam rolling is going to help them if they don't sort what's going on mentally, So people need to know that. And, I'm so glad that we are talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Arun, the idea that dopamine drives motivation, not just pleasure, what does that mean and why do they say that?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to go a bit out of topic from sports for this. So I'm pretty sure we know how disorders work, like addiction disorders, gambling, or even alcohol, or even anything that gives you an instantaneous reward or an uncertain reward. Okay, so what happens in this with the body is that a person, without expecting, let's say for example gambling, you do not know what you're going to win. You may even lose, but they still go ahead with it. Why is that? And that is because there's an unseen aspect, which is the increase in the level of dopamine because of the uncertainty of the possibility of winning. So now let's move out the aspect of disorders over here, like gambling and so on. Let's put in sports. So now for sports people over here, we have this aspect of, they would love to win. Their drive is to win. And they don't really understand the complete concept of it, but the main aim is just push to win. And sometimes when they don't meet it, the dopamine level drops. Because over here, for a person who is training himself mentally and is like, I'm going to push myself beyond the expected limit, and over here the dopamine levels are also pushed to that point because he's expecting something which is still unexpected. That increases the level of dopamine, which increases productivity as well in the person to expect something, because dopamine is like a happiness hormone. It allows you to also feel good, one. Apart from that, it allows you to function better in terms of aspects of where you're working out or even doing simplistic stuff. So that aspect of dopamine playing an important role to push a person to work out well or even achieve their specific goals is very important, not in just terms of feeling happy. So it plays a very
intrinsic motivation really matters.
It matters.
Yeah. This one is actually for both of you. And in India, we have a particular relationship with mental health. The easiest thing, we don't talk about it. Yeah. So, especially in sports and fitness, we see that toughness is celebrated, right? But actually, what happens because of this silence? We're not talking.
Yeah, I mean, I would actually talk as a physio here, right? A lot of time what happens is that when you're celebrating somebody being really, really tough, you are actually keeping them away from performing better. Like as a physio, that's what I feel, because I have experienced such incredible athletes in my life, and and I have experienced events when people say, "Oh my God, you did amazing, that was unbelievable," and when I go back, I don't say anything, and when I go back and I meet them in person, I say, that's fine, right? Like you did great, but let's recover, let's refocus, right? You need to rest, you need to understand that you can't stay in this feeling of, oh, I did so well, and then forget everything else. Because when you do that, you are not taking care of your body, and you are in a different space altogether. It happens with a lot of people who are mentally aware. They know that they need to be grounded as well, but in a lot of people that doesn't happen, right? And they feel that I need to be tough again. There is no interval of resting, recovering, and performing better, right? So I think that lands you up into injuries as well, right? Because you have to be tough again, right? Yeah. So you are going to push yourself, right? Mentally, physically, all aspects. And it's good to be tough, but it's also good to take care of yourself, physically and mentally.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a really important thing. When I especially come across somebody really, I can't talk about other people, to talk to other people, but I choose to stay quiet at that time and then take it slowly into their process.
Aaron, what do you think about this silence about this mental health?
I actually, according to what ma'am had said, I resonate with that a lot. Being an athlete as well myself, I've understood that success is all that's celebrated. Okay, and because success is always celebrated, nobody really focuses on the the after effects of the efforts that have been put. And that burnout doesn't show, while you're preparing or while you win, it shows afterwards. And this is where I think in India, like we're specifically talking about India, when success is met, a person lets all the weights down. They just love to bathe in that glory, which is actually a good thing. It's not a bad thing. But let's say that's step one. Step two is to obviously progress further. And when they don't do that, it's like a reset. you meet an expectation. It's like you hit the bell, and then you come back down. But if you don't keep pushing, you don't cross the bell. So it reaches a point where they're stagnant. They reach a stage of like plateau as well at times. And to push that, starting from scratch, people lose their focus again. I'm like, oh no, I have to start again. And that's what drives them away from, focusing on achieving a bigger goal at times. And that's where I think through mental health, it's very important to make sure that they realize the after effects of even the positives. The positives definitely do give you a good feeling, but utilizing that as fuel for going for something else is very important. And also considering the after effects of, the wear out, the tear, like ma'am said, the recovery is very important. Just as everybody would treat a broken bone, or like a torn muscle after like extensively really working out or going for a race and doing that, you need that recovery. It's the same with your brain, the same with mental health. If you do not ignore that, you shouldn't ignore your mental health as well. So yeah.
It's something very similar that, being in the field of running, I'm just used to it. People coming and saying, okay, if they get a PR, the thing is the next race they want to go and better that, even if it is by 30 seconds or even if it's by 2-3 seconds, I got a PR. Every race is treated like a PR. And that, like what both of you said, that is the silence, right? They're not looking into the mental aspect side of things. You reach a level, you celebrate it, and then you reassess where you are, you fall back, and then get into the process all over again. Don't treat every outing, irrespective of the sport. IPL is going on now. Somebody right down at number 7 could be in the top 4. It all depends on how they reassess their situation after every win and, come back up.
The important thing to know as an athlete is you cannot win every single time.
True. The graph just cannot be.
Exactly. You have to lose, you have to learn, grow, win again. So that's something that every athlete, every recreational athlete should also think about.
Awesome.
One very good analogy that came to my mind while this was going on, the same way a spring works. Okay, in order for it to go up or jump up again, it needs to come down to load up, to take in, absorb, and then with that same energy bounce out again to reach a better height. So that's basically the same process even with us human beings. Whether it be physical or mental, you definitely need to come back down, reassess, store that energy that you can, and then go out again. Immediately pushing could even completely wear you out.
Absolutely. One last one, okay, from my side. If I ask you both to finish this sentence, the biggest myth about mental health and fitness in India is?
Exercise can fix your mind. Oh my God.
Yeah,
you cannot squat out a depression, like a clinical depression.
Yeah, you definitely cannot. So there's this one term that people use, or I also use, so it's called sublimation. Okay, it's where a person uses positives in their life, like workout, sports, and so much so everything, to run out whatever they're facing. And that could be mental, it could be like emotional. And yes, it might be a very in-the-moment coping strategy, but they don't look at it apart from that. They just look at it as an immediate fix. So I definitely think mental health is not taken seriously because of the stigma around it right now in India.
As promised, before we made this episode, I asked the community a couple of questions. How has your mental health affected your physical fitness? What are your barriers to fitness? And what is the one question you would like to ask an expert? The responses came in. Thank you for that. And Aaron and Dipali, I need you both to give honest answers to these real questions from real people. Aaron, I'll go with you first, and I'm going to read this out. Someone from the community wrote, "There are days when my brain comes up with a million reasons not to go to the gym. But I've still drowned the noise and shown up, because showing up is still better than doing nothing. The question is, how do you train your brain to accept fitness as a lifestyle and not a temporary fix? And how do you enjoy the process even on days when it feels like a punishment?"
Okay. So yeah, the person who asked the question, I'm actually glad they've asked it, because the process of asking it has also answered it. The answer lies within the question itself. It's just that the person needs to focus a little bit. But looking at it from that perspective is why we need to allow people who have such questions gain perspective from a point where they can understand how they function in order to not just meeting expectations of, going to the gym, staying fit. I have to do this because I have to be fit. I have to go to the gym because it's my goal. It's not about that. It's about creating a routine which they definitely enjoy. And that's where I think, we use the same dopamine cycle that is there by increasing a person's need to go, because they know they're going to achieve something, but not by the fact that they have to meet an expectation, but by the fact that they learn to enjoy the process. So maybe creating a routine that fits in the three most important things: gym, diet, and sleep. You just need to meet these three important things, and whilst you do all of this, in between the time that's there, you can do anything else. So this could be a small suggestion to try. Not exactly a quick fix, but it's a routine that you can try following. Focus on the three and learn to step up from there slowly. And I think it would help.
Thanks. Dipali, this one's for you. Probably a complete journey in one paragraph. So it reads, I lost my job and put on 5 kgs in 6 months. 2 years later, high cholesterol showed up in my annual report. That scared me enough to start lifting, running, and doing yoga. Now, when work stress hits, I get up and work out for 30 minutes. How do we push ourselves to work out when stressed at work or during cycle time with mood swings?
Yeah, like you correctly said, it's an entire life in one paragraph, right? And I mean, to put it where the information is, the answer really does justice, is let's talk. I'm not going to answer the first bit and the second bit. Let's take the second bit, which is so important, is your menstrual cycle. Now, every woman should know that there are 3 phases in your menstrual cycle. There is follicular phase, there is ovulation phase, and then there is the luteal phase. Now, what happens is, in your follicular phase, there is estrogen in your system at a good level, and that actually helps you feel good, right? It is also ideal for you to do some endurance related and strength related work. Now you move into ovulation, where estrogen is the highest, which means there's a good chance you're feeling your happiest in this moment, right? But because estrogen is high, there is a lot of laxity in your joint, and that can make you more prone to injuries if you do a lot of high intensity work. A great phase to build strength, and then you go into your luteal phase. Now everything is going kind of downhill. Estrogen is dropping, progesterone is going up. You're not feeling great, right? Your body is not feeling great, your mind is not feeling great. So it is important to stick to basic things like walking and maybe yoga or other things, which are much easier, which will also help your mind and body together, right? Now all of this, it is very important to know that this is what I am going through. Now that awareness itself creates so much stability in your mind. Okay, this is going to happen and this is how I need to function. Now you've already structured your plan, right? And then you need to start work around it, right? Again, a lot of women especially are so worried about weight gain all the time. We are still in a society where being a certain figure, I should say, is important. A lot of women think like that, right? The body image, because obviously the society and other things and pressure, whatever, right? But as women, we need to think that our body goes through so much, right? The hormonal fluctuation is insane, that's happening internally, and we just don't see it, so we think that you're not aware about it, right? So you need to really give yourself a space of awareness where okay, this is happening, and the weight gain I can really work on, and any amount of weight gain can be worked on if you have a structured mindset. You know that I'm going to take care of this, right? So now again, the planning bit comes in when you have a good strength and conditioning coach, you have a physio who assesses you, tells you these are the problem areas, let's work on this, and then you have somebody to support you, like a mental coach, right? Because a lot of people think that, oh, I need to have a mental problem to go to a mental coach, but no. If you're struggling with consistency, if you're struggling with thoughts that are bothering you every single day, you need to meet a professional, right? So that structured understanding of your life. And I'm not saying that, okay, go to them every day. That's not going to happen every day. But when you decide that my life is in my hands and you start structuring it properly, things are going to be really, really smooth. It will take time. It won't happen overnight.
Aaron, this response actually stopped me on the tracks. It reads, my fitness journey has been shaped by combinations. A positive mind with physical setbacks. A positive mind and body in sync. And then a slide into a negative mental health at peak fitness. Poor mind space led to poor sleep, and my mind started dictating what my body was capable of. What is the subtle difference between listening to your body and not listening to your mind?
Okay. So I think this will also bring us to how this podcast also started, about how the body actually is dictated by how the mind gives up first. Correct. So now, as per what that response had said, I could see that the person either was on extremes of being really fit and in not such a great shape in the mental space, but also at one point where mentally they were like really good, but they were not in their peak physical state. And this could explain to how an individual actually would be trying to push themselves to achieve something to a point where it's not exactly how do I say it? It's more like a burnout, actually. So it would be more along the lines of this person has tried their best at one point to meet a level and they've achieved that level, but that's burned them out mentally. And now they're not able to, take care of that. And that's triggering them to go down a spiral of another path where it's not exactly mentally positive for them. And now that, again, when they reach a point where, they want to meet another specific level, they're not ready for anything. They're like, I can't do this anymore. So that takes a step back. Along with the mind taking a step back, the body also does. So when the mind takes a step back, your body also uses that as a coping mechanism to just relax. Your body's way of coping is to also give in to, not functioning to its peak. Okay, your mind dictates that for a reason. That's why it's either at extremes where you're functioning really well and your mind is also there. But if that's not happening, that's why you keep shifting between two different poles as well. And to get that in line is by solidifying the way that you think initially about, I know I can step back at times, and stepping back doesn't mean you're losing progress. It means you're definitely assessing how much more further you can go. Yes. So it's like saying, I know I'm gonna be at my peak fitness now and I'll reach that, but I'm gonna be so exhausted mentally. So let me not, push myself onto things that require me to also push myself mentally. And that might cost me also my physical fitness. So it's like going back onto the left lane, which is like the slow lane, where the right lane is for you to go faster and focus on things. You take a step back, relax, recover, like how ma'am was speaking about, that the recovery part of it is also very important. So just take a step back, don't push, and then restart and go again. So that whole process has to happen simultaneously. So then you don't meet extremes.
Wow. There's one more, and this will probably resonate with everyone watching. It reads, I can go months staying in superb shape. Then for months, I just let go and restart all over again. I always play the extremes. I think you mentioned it, right? Why can't I stay moderately consistent rather than swing between all or nothing?
Yeah, I think the same thing that I was talking about is pretty similar. Yeah. So it's the same process or the same mindset to how a person, gets stuck between wanting to meet expectations, setting it, and meeting it because, they've pushed themselves so hard. It's like your brain works so evidently to take care of your health, like your the food, the digestion, breathing, your rest. The brain takes care of all of that. And when you're supposed to move, like even if I'm moving my hands, I know my brain is sending the signals. So there's a lot of work that the brain is definitely doing. So you know that you need physical rest after playing a game, but you don't give that same rest to your brain. You're like, no, you're coming back, you rest, you're thinking about, okay, tomorrow I need to do this, tomorrow I need to do that. There's this match coming up, I need to be prepared for that. So there itself, your brain is still working, but your body is resting. Yeah. So that balance is not set. It's where you need to learn how to, through practices here and there, that you need to also let your brain rest, or let your mental state come to a point where it's back to starting again.
Yeah. Dipali, this one is from a new mother. She wrote in, being a new mom, I don't get time to do full workouts, which kills my consistency and motivation. How can I build a routine that supports me and not stresses me?
I think we'll have to do an entire podcast to answer this question, because like pregnancy has like so much of effect on your body physically, right? I mean, we are talking about mental health, but I think what pregnancy does to your body is it really takes time for your body to recover, right? Now we can talk about the science as much as we want, but it is not easy for young mothers, right? Also, when you visit your doctor, the doctor talks a lot about the first 9 months, but nobody prepares you for what's coming, right? That's the system. And I think largely when I was hearing all these questions, I also realized that there are so many people out there who don't have direction, right? They don't know what to do, right? So with pregnant women, it is very difficult. Your body is recovering and it's going to take 2 to 5 years to get there, right? Physically. So you prioritize what you need to do right now. If I have to be really scientific, let's say that the pelvic floor and your diastasis recti is your first priority as a new mom, right? You don't want to start everything immediately. Give yourself 1 or 2 weeks to rest out, be there with your child, see how things are. Post that, the first thing that you should focus on is, okay, what can I do minimum to work on these areas? Like my pelvic floor is extremely weak and my diastasis is not functioning. Let's prioritize that. Let's pick up only 4 to 5 exercises which are super easy to do, and you can do them in 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and that should be good enough. So set realistic expectation of, okay, if I'm done with this, I've done a great job, and then progress month by month and start building. So it's much easier. So you're not putting yourself under pressure that I need to do this 8 exercises no matter what, right? You prioritize what you need and then you take it above from there.
Makes sense. Absolutely. Aaron, this one is from the parent of a young athlete. My teenage child was passionate about their sports for years and now suddenly wants to quit. Anxious before competitions, inconsolable after losses. How do I tell the difference between burnout and a phase? And where is the line between support and pressure?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I think that's what a lot of young athletes are facing to at this point. So I start from like a story point of view where a child gets into sport because they love it. Okay, usually. And when this child is performing well, they get the validation. And when the validation exceeds to a point where they actually are getting rewards, which are like medals and certificates and status, it plays a very good role in the child's life. But the moment that turns into, you need to achieve, and I'm not saying that parents put that pressure, but automatically as a child, the child thinks that they need to meet that expectation without even it being set. So the child automatically starts this engine. And I'm saying this specific to how maybe the Indian culture works. The Indian culture is, we are set out to achieve. Like I think you mentioned, we celebrate the toughness and the victory and all of that. It's the same thing over here. Children want to please, and by doing that, they forget about themselves. And as a parent, to ask this question, it means that you've already taken that first step to insight. You are aware of your child. The child has maybe reached a point where they're definitely burnt out. And the difference between a phase and burnout is, burnout doesn't mean that the child completely quits. Burnout is a phase. as well. So there is a point where it's like you're saying you're completely tired from playing the sport. That very day you cannot play, so you're burnt out at that point. But after you regain that energy, you recover, you definitely would love to play that sport again, because that intrinsic motivation of your love for the sport stays on. So if we could target that by making sure that the child relives the enjoyable moments of it, that could be a small trigger to pulling the child back, and that could definitely impact. So understanding that, instilling that aspect. And I think the second part of the question was about the support, correct? And this is where, again, in the Indian culture, Indian families, we look at it from a point where the family is always involved. As how we Indians are, that's actually very good, but at the same time, it definitely also has its drawbacks. You can't say that it's good and bad, all the time, but there is more negative to it, because when a child is in the same circle of the parents always being around them for the sport, for the achievement, for this, there's a lot of emotional attachment towards the sport as well as to the parents. So there's a lot of emotions playing there. With that, there's a lot of expectations from the parents' end, now then the coach's end, then from their end. So there are like multiple avenues which are definitely dawning on the child, and that impacts the child to a point where, like, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore. So it's not like they've lost the love for the sport, but they've lost the drive for it. So how do we restart that drive is by reconnecting the other smaller parts of, you love it, so let's try getting you to enjoying it more instead of achieving more. And that mindset of the parent should be like, okay, fine, you're allowed to fail. Let's put, like, it's like saying you need to reach this point, but if you don't reach it directly, let's take a break in between. From there, this is more achievable than it is from here. So using that mindset at times could definitely help the parent, the child, and the child will eventually even go past what they could initially expect.
No, absolutely, absolutely. This is reminding me of, now, because it's summer vacation and these summer camps are going around the place. There'll be 10 kids in the field, let it be football or badminton, and there will be 25, 30 people from outside telling them what to do. Probably the coach there, or they themselves won't have a hold, because even for swimming, you'll find parents standing over there. So that adds so much of a pressure on the children, and I guess that mindset should change. Like you rightly said, when they start enjoying the sport, irrespective of whatever it is, that should be acknowledged more than just the medals and the winnings and the certifications and all that. Perfect. So we've almost come to the close of the episode. But before that, I have one question I wanted to ask, which is, so I know elite athletes, we all know that, elite athletes use the services of a mind coach, and they also are they have their strength and conditioning coaches. They have these, departments. Yeah. Do you think that's applicable for everyday people as well? I'll tell you why. The reason is because today sports is very accessible to all of us. I can go and choose to play pickleball. I can go and choose to play badminton because courts are available, right? But if I'm getting into a sport, even if it is just to get a physical activity done, there is a method to madness. That is something I believe in. If people want to start running also, everybody can walk, everybody can run, but there is a method to madness, right, in any sport. So I'm just trying to see, for people who are like at a recreational level as well, how important do you think a mind coach and a sports physio working with a team really is?
So I think, like you said, for athletes it's extremely essential. Yes, they should not function without it, because performance is attached to it. But what I feel is, like, in my mind, even a housewife is an athlete. Like, there's so much going on, and then if she decides to just pick up a sport, right, and do something. So if I have any clients or patients or recreational athletes that I see, I tell them that you need to function like an athlete.
You need to think like one.
You can think. You have to think like one, because that will allow you not just to have longevity in life, but also something where it's not just longevity, but it's also sustainable health. something that you can sustain over a really, really long time and keep enjoying the sport, right? Imagine if you exercise just 2 days a week, 3 days a week, recover well, have a mind coach that you can go to when you have an issue, or even if you feel like going to one, because there's so many things that we can't tell everybody, right? And if you have a system where you know, okay, my food is taken care of, my nutrition I'm aware about, and it's not about salads and fat diet and all of that, but it's also about, okay, good supplementation, what are my no's, what are my do's, what are my don'ts, simple things, right? Like keeping it simple but still having a great ecosystem is going to give you such beautiful, long, healthy, sustainable lifestyle.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So
That's correct.
I would say that's for everybody.
Absolutely.
You know?
And I think as answering the same question as a mind coach, that would literally be the same answer I would also give, because the aspects that would entail would give a lot of, if you're going into the biological aspects of it, you are satisfied biologically, internally, your body functions that way because you're giving it the resources that it needs. And see, as an athlete, it's a little bit more tight-wired for sure, but at the same time, for a person who's recreational, or maybe even thinking of stepping from recreational into professional, if there is consistency here, to practice that same consistency the moment you get professional, it's a direct line. You don't have to struggle too much. So practicing it from the start allows you to go ahead into getting into the proper groove over there. So definitely getting in touch. See, as I would say, whether it be for sports therapy or counseling in general, therapy is not just for people who have issues. It's for anybody who just needs to talk. You do not need to have an issue. It'll give you perspective, it'll give you solutions that you will figure out on your own. And that's what people need. You do not need to have any issues at all for that.
Like you said, probably the answer is already there. It's just that the mind coach would probably put it out.
Yes.
Perspective is what
Perspective
matters.
is what
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely. So everything we heard today, the science, the stories, your questions, point to one thing. The mind needs just as much training as the body does. Let's close with something practical. Okay. Let's give our viewers some practical tools, simple things people watching this episode can probably try. Okay. Aaron, I'll start with you first, our mind coach. So Aaron, you shared a specific technique when we were talking. It is the third person reframe. Can you just elaborate on that and tell how an average person, like a normal person, can actually relate to it?
Absolutely. So this is a very interesting area where I think we face this in terms of how our coach speaks to us. Okay, so it works in a way where your coach tells you something whilst he's amping you up for the sport and getting you ready, and he's telling you, for example, XYZ, you can definitely do it. And that hits a bit more harder and pushes your motivation to a point where you're like, because my coach said it, I can do it. Now, let's say you don't have a coach. Okay, so this third person reframe, taking the very words of it, you're speaking to yourself in a third person perspective. Like if I was supposed to tell myself, Aaron, I can do this. I'm going to do this for sure. I'm going to be able to do this. There could be a slight point of hesitation or inconsistency in my own thoughts and voice. But if I change the reframe to a point where, Aaron, you can definitely achieve because you're capable. You are completely positive in aspects like this. And I'm putting it from a perspective that I'm speaking to myself, but not as me here, but as a person definitely doing that. The narrative completely changes because you're pushing yourself, but not from internally, but from a point where it's from an external third person perspective. And that usually does help, instead of saying I, to reframing it to you speaking out your own name. So that helps much more differently. Yes.
Wow. Dipali, if there is one physical practice anybody can use before they just start training, about 60 seconds, that's it, just for a minute, just to directly connect their body and mind before they start training, what would you recommend?
This is something that I actually recommend to a lot of patients even now. I usually tell them that you have to focus on your breathing technique, you know. And when you breathe in, you focus on what you're holding up. And it's thoughts and physical body together. So there are set of breaths that you're going to take in those 60 seconds. And the first few are going to be like, if you're holding up anything, try to think that you're just letting it go with that breathe out. And the next few are going to be feeling your parts. Like feel your, for example, if you're talking to me about a racket sport athlete, right? I would, or anybody who is going to do a recreational thing, I'm going to say, okay, feel your shoulders. See, do you feel that they are tightened up, you know? And that breath out should be completely focused on your shoulder. Then let's go to your wrist. And that's the technique that a lot of people use in general. Yeah. But breathing, not just as a technique, but understanding that you're actually prepping your body, like the pre warm up, right? And then you go into warm up will actually really make you completely aware where you're physically and mentally. And then you get into your warm up. So now you're actually preparing. You know. So I think that's what I also follow when I exercise, and I feel that really helps me stay aware about my body physically, mentally in the session, you know. So
there's one thing that I do, you know, when I wake up in the morning. It depends on how my day went, but as soon as I get up, I kind of do a body scan just to, you know, assess how I feel. Since I'm constantly into some physical activity or the other, I could be carrying load from the previous day. So when I do that body scan, it helps me, you know, figure out whether I can actually go out and perform my scheduled run according to the plan, or I need to change it, right? So do you think that is something, you know, a simple thing like doing a body scan, that is something which probably people can also try, right?
Absolutely. I definitely think a body scan does beneficial work to a person's outcome for the day as well, even in normal terms apart from sport. So what it does is it allows you to assess, like how ma'am said, involving breathing. Breathing definitely helps in. I think when a person does a body scan involving these aspects of, you know, completely understanding how your body functions, what do you feel at that point, and that gives you an aspect of understanding of where do you stand for the day, and it allows you to assess, okay, fine, I know I want to go for the run. Does my internal motivation or what I feel inside my body right now align with that very thought? So a body scan definitely works, and it helps you visualize better.
Is there a single mental fitness habit you do, Aaron? I mean, not something which you prescribe. Like Dipali said, she practices the breathing technique, right? So is there any single mental habit which you do for yourself?
Well, I do definitely do something called an anchored awareness technique, and this usually is very applicable with a person who can administer it for you or over a recording done, but I do it because I know how it functions specifically. I love to anchor myself to the very moment, and this allows with a lot of grounding techniques as well as breathing techniques. So it's everything combined. You anchor yourself to the very moment, and you're aware of your current scenarios around you. You're assessing only the present and understand what you can do next. So it allows you to be calmer, grounded, and understand what are your next steps for sure. Because if you're going to be concerned about, I'm not sure, I'm not this, I'm not that, and you're not focusing about what you have in your plate, then it becomes difficult to see what more you can take in or what else you can take out. So it allows you to assess your plate alone, what weight, what's in it, how much more you can take off it. So anchored awareness helps me process those aspects, and it allows me to go ahead, whether I have good or bad, or even if the worst thing comes upon me. I think anchored awareness grounds me and roots me into my current scenario.
There you go. You have your 3 tools: breathing technique, body scan, anchored awareness. The mind and body are not 2 things. They were never meant to be 2 things. We just built a fitness industry that treats them that way. Dipali, Aaron, thank you so much for being here today. Not just for the expertise you brought in, but for the generosity of the conversation. And for everyone who sent in the questions, thank you. Because asking for help, even anonymously, takes courage. Train your body, take care of your mind, They are the same commitment. If Mind in Motion spoke to you, do share it with someone who has been told to push through, with that young athlete who probably needs the help, or with that person who's constantly pushing but never talks about the mental side. This conversation belongs to all of them. I am Rungenie and this is RF Insights. Do like, share and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.